Hello, everyone. Hope you can see me and see the screen. Again, my name is Chris D.T. Gordon. Before we begin, I want to offer what I call a hair warning. See if I can get the technical. Oh, I got to set up to screen, do a little slideshow here. There we go. All right. There we go. I want to offer a care warning, first of all, that I will be discussing physical and mental trauma during my presentation. I always like to give students and teachers a heads up in case someone might be dealing with an issue and they should not be just blindsided by it. But now I have a question for you. How do you use your origin story? Now, when we hear the phrase origin story, we tend to think of a certain type of topic. And before I get into that topic, I want to discuss what an origin story is in case you're not sure. An origin story is an event or a life-changing experience that sets the trajectory of one's life. They could be simple everyday events. They could be life-changing monumental experiences. We all go through different stages of life, and we all, and through our lives, we have these origin stories, and so they could be anything. But when I think of an origin story, I think of superheroes. I'm going to check in the chat here. Do you have a favorite superhero? And if you do, who is that superhero? What is your favorite superhero? I want to see if anyone has one. Oh, Batman, okay. Superman, Wonder Woman. All right, Wonder Woman definitely popular. Ghost Rider, nice. Nice pull, Gary. Batman again, Allie. Okay. My favorite superhero I'm going to show here is Nightcrawler. He's an X-Man. I actually received this from a friend a couple months ago. He's one of my favorites. So thank you for sharing. Those superheroes all have origin stories. They all experience some kind of life-changing event that set the trajectory of their lives. And some people think that an origin story gives a superhero superpowers. Well, some of you listed Batman, and Batman doesn't have any superpowers, but he does have an origin story. And when we experience those origin stories, we have to remember, if I can get now we gotta make sure there we go. Where your thoughts go, your mind and body will follow. If you have positive thoughts, you're going to develop a positive mindset and then in turn, take positive action. Of course, the opposite is true. You could have negative thoughts, develop a negative mindset and take negative action. So you have to be very careful about what you think when you're going through your own origin story, or maybe just going through everyday life. Now, I'm sure we all could talk about our favorite superheroes all day long, but I have my own origin story to tell here. Before March 18th, 2015, I was a seemingly ordinary and average 40-year-old husband and father of three. That's my beautiful wife, Becky, and our three fantastic kids, Josh, Seth, and Anna. Becky and I were both teachers. She taught at the public school here in New Ulm, Minnesota, and I taught online, as Kaylee said earlier. Yes, there was online teaching before the pandemic, if you can imagine that. And we were just living our best lives, doing our group and our family activities and also our individual likes. For example, as you can pick out, I like superheroes. So I'd go to superhero movies. I also like to run and be very active in my non-teaching life. Thank you, Kaylee. But then March 18th, 2015 happened. And it started like every Origin story, practically every origin story. It was a normal day. I was helping Becky get the kids ready for school. She would drive them to daycare and school respectively before going to her own high school. So I decided to pick up Seth and fly him back and forth to our detached garage and put him into the van. Well, I veered too far to the right and I scratched the back of my right hand on my garage wall. When I looked at it, and to quote one of my favorite movies of all time, "'Tis but a scratch." It wasn't bleeding, so I said, no problem. I'm not going to worry about it till I get back into the house. So I put Seth into the car seat. I kissed them all goodbye. And as they went on their way, I went on my way back into the house, washed my hand, and start my day of online teaching. Well, 3 days later, I wake up and I see a lacrosse ball-sized bump on my right elbow. I decided to drive myself to the urgent care clinic here in New Ulm. The doctor looked at it and said, well, it could be bursitis, which is an inflammation of the bursa sac in our joints. So just keep an eye on it and just let us know if anything happens. So I went home and did just that. I kept an eye on it. As that bump grew and grew and grew until my right arm was 3 times the size of my left. As you can see, I equate this to my left arm being puny Banner and my right arm being the Hulk. I was the Hulk in mid-transformation. However, I was less angry and smashy and more sicky and tiredy. So Becky, after procuring a babysitter for the kids, drove me to the emergency room where they quickly admitted me. But as soon as they started taking vitals, they noticed something else was wrong. I had gone septic. And if you're not sure what sepsis is a reaction that the body has to a foreign agent. And in my case, it was pumping a chemical into the bloodstream to fight off this foreign agent. However, the downside of sepsis is that it could kill you as it's trying to save you. So I had a poison coursing through my veins and a ginormous right appendage. Admittedly, not the craziest Saturday night I ever experienced, but easily top 5. Well, they kept me overnight for observation. And in the morning, that attending doctor came up to my gurney and said something I will never forget. She said, Mr. Gordon, this is beyond us. We can do nothing more for you here. Where do you want to go? Well, I quickly said Mayo, as in the Mayo Clinic. Not only because it was 2 hours away and world-renowned, but Becky's parents, Bill and Dee, lived in Rochester. So I knew that Becky, the kids, and Max the dog would have a place to stay for I was sure, 2 or 3 days this would take to resolve itself, given my vast medical knowledge. So they flew me to Rochester. And as soon as they admitted me to St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, they quickly diagnosed me with necrotizing fasciitis, also known as flesh-eating bacteria. Now, I know that flesh-eating bacteria gets a bad rap in the press, and it is totally deserved. While it is a rare disease, it inflicts 700 to 1,200 people annually and has a 25% mortality rate. It is something you do not want to catch. And I had gotten it from a mere scratch on the back of my right hand. So as soon as they knew what they were dealing with, they got me into surgery. They told Becky what was happening. And then I was out for 5 days. They put me in an induced coma. In that time, they removed the infected skin and tissue from the back of my right hand where the scratch began, all the way up through my arm, shoulder, chest, and back. and removed everything that was infected. That was the first surgery. Once they were sure or close to being sure that they had cleared out all the bacteria, they started seeing, okay, what was going on, and then they noticed that we were out of the woods yet. At that time, I had about a 30% chance of survival. So they quickly put me into a second surgery. And before the second surgery, though, they did notice that the infection had gone so far into my right arm that they were planning to amputate. Not it was a possibility, they were certain. So they get me into the second surgery, but thankfully the occupational therapist in attendance saw that I still had hand function. So what they elected to do was to take a 15-inch by 4-inch flap of skin from my left thigh and place it in my right hand and forearm. So since this is my thigh on my hand, as you can see there, I call this my thand, copyright pending. However, many of us elementary teachers know the story of when you give a mouse a cookie. Well, I had my own version. My arm was now saved, but I had a huge hole in my leg from that flap that was taken. So they had to extract one of my quadricep muscles, and then they installed knobs on either side of my leg. And then a shoestring type contraption called a Jacob's ladder on the inside so they can tighten the wound over time. And again, most of these surgeries took place in 5 days, not to mention all the skin grafts they had to remove. They had to harvest from my thighs and my back. So I had skin removed from my legs, or from my arm and my chest. I had a huge hole that was now -1 muscle in my leg and knobs sticking out of my thigh. I woke up 5 days later. While my life was saved, it was definitely not the same. And as I was starting to reacclimate to my new life, I was brought back to that thought of where your thoughts go, your mind and body will follow. Sure, my life was saved, but what reality was I facing then? As I was starting to think about what my new reality was going to be like, I had all these questions, but no answers. I thought about what was I going to be able to do physically? How was I going to handle mental stresses, either big ones or even the smallest inconvenience? How were my relationships going to be with Becky, the kids, other family members and friends, my colleagues, my students, even strangers? How were we going to deal with this financially? Again, all of these questions had no answers. And I felt not a physical bacteria now, but what I call personal bacteria. And it was sending me down a negative path mentally. Thankfully, though, that personal bacteria did not have time to ruminate, because in one of our early conversations since my surgeries, well, the first group of surgeries, Becky started telling me about how people in our various communities were stepping up to help us. Our neighbors are starting to clear off our driveway and our sidewalks of snow. This was happening in late March, early April. And I'm sure Gary can attest, being a fellow Michigander, that March and April are basically winter round 2. All right, there's still snow to remove. The local police were driving by the house to keep an eye on it, because I live in a small town, and the words flesh-eating bacteria carry as quickly as the bacteria itself. So everyone knew what was going on with me. My colleagues, some of whom lived in Rochester because of the online nature of my job, they would stop by Bill and Dee's house and not only drop off food and actually toys for my kids, but sometimes even clothing, because Becky and the kids and Max the dog were only there for 2 or 3 days. They were there for 2 weeks and had barely anything of their own at the beginning of that 2-week stretch. We had a friend from Becky's high school start a GoFundMe account that raised well over enough money to cover the lost wages from my hospitalization. If you can believe it, I had run out of sick days well before I was discharged. So that GoFundMe account covered our lost wages handsomely. When she told me all of those things, I felt that personal bacteria wash away. And I realized that my current reality was not my destiny. Yes, I was facing an uncertain future physically, but that doesn't mean that everything was going to be bad. It was just going to be different. And that's where I created what I now call the attitude of gratitude. I'm going to remove this chat here. Give me 1 second here. And I didn't call it that at first, but I started asking myself questions. And the first question I asked was, let's see if I can get the button going here. Come on, wake up. Oh, technology, you're so fun. Where are we at here? Guess I'll have to do this. There we go. What good things did I have in my life? Well, in the hospital, I thought of my family, my friends, and maybe you can answer in the chat. When you think of what good things you have in your life, what pops up in your mind? What are those ideas that you have when you think of the good things in your life? So grandbaby, amazing friends and family, your life, how supportive your husband is, a roof over my head. Exactly. And those are all fantastic things. And that's what I thought of at first. But then I thought about, well, what about those small, seemingly insignificant parts of our lives that we gloss over, we overlook, but they actually bring us those daily doses of joy. So I thought about the Netflix show Daredevil. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it. It was on Netflix, but now it's on Disney Plus. My brother, Jeff, who lives in Muskegon, Michigan, and since I'm from Michigan, I have to do this. He lives there on the west side. He flew from Grand Rapids to the Twin Cities and took a shuttle down to spend a week and a half with the family. And while he was in Minnesota, he bought me an iPad. So I was able to download Netflix and start binge watching Daredevil. I see Kaylee likes Daredevil as well. And so I really appreciated that show because it took my mind off of the upcoming surgeries I had to prepare myself for. And then I thought about how the window in my hospital room didn't let the sun shine directly into my eyes. I know that sounds like a really weird thing to mention, but when you are confined to one space, like I was for weeks on end, and you don't have control over your environment, it becomes almost maddening when you have to ask someone for every little thing. And so being able to not having to ask people to shut the window was actually a blessing for me. And then there's the hospital pizza. And I know hospital food gets a bad rap, but if you're ever at St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, Minnesota, order the pepperoni pizza. You will not regret it. And so today I still do this. I think of door hinges. because they let us walk through walls like certain superheroes, and they make it easy for our house to function. Then I think about my beat up old mouse here I've had for years. You can see that in the picture in my camera, it's held together by duct tape. But I think that we are kindred spirits, that mouse and I, because we're held together by foreign objects. And then I'm not sure if you can tell what that is on the right-hand side of my screen. That is my right armpit. You see, skin grafts are non-porous, which means there are no sweat glands. They don't sweat. So I can make a stick of deodorant last for 6 months. I know you're all jealous, and I wish I could tell you the glory of being able to make a stick of Old Spice last for half a year, but you're just going to have to go with me on it. It's pretty awesome. And so what I want to do now is I want to introduce a practice you can do so you can quickly find things that you can be grateful for. And this is called the 5 and 10. And what you do is you give yourself 10 seconds and you look around and you try to pick 5 things that you're thankful for. You don't have to think of the reason just yet, but just think of 5 things you're thankful for in that 10 seconds. And then you share out loud or maybe mentally why you are thankful for those items. And I forgot to mention that if you wanted to, you could, on your sheet, you could label TAG and you'll get it in a second if you spell it out. But when you do this, you find that you have more in your life to be thankful for than you previously thought. I'm going to do it right now. So I'm thankful for my running water bottle. I'm thankful for my painter's tape. I'm thankful for my garbage can. I'm thankful for my cape, and I'm thankful for this camera. All right, so these water bottles. I went on my last 20-mile run before my upcoming marathon, and these help keep me hydrated during my run. I said, what was it? The painter's tape. I use painter's tape to put up pictures, or actually to lift the screen a little, lift the curtain a little bit. I have painter tape holding up this screen so it doesn't fall down on me. My garbage can, Michigan Wolverines, go blue. My cape, oh, come on. Who does not love a good cape? Even has my tag name on it, my insignia, and it just looks awesome. And then finally, this camera, so I can present to you today. So what are some things you could be thankful for in this 5 seconds? I'll give you a choice. A little participation here. You can do the 5 and 10 right now and tell me a couple things you're thankful for, or just think of 3 things on your own that have made you happy or your life easier this week. So you can look around and think of things right now in the moment, or you could think back through the previous week. What are 3 things that have made you happy or made your life easier this week? Okay, so Nicole says they have fun colored erasable pens. Awesome. It does it spices up a piece of paper. So what else can you be thankful for today? Okay. That's awesome, Gary. Your wife running errands. It's always good when we have help when we're doing these projects. Dr. Pepper, your coworker bought you. Awesome. That's great, Pamela. Let's get maybe a couple more here. Let's see. Well, thank you. Thank you, Kaylee. I appreciate that as well. I appreciate hearing you play. And your husband picking up a late lunch. Awesome, Pamela. And so as I started, oh, you have hail there too, Nicole? Yeah, it was 32 degrees when I went out for my run this morning. So yeah, we're still in winter round 2 here. Your rabbit bumping your ankles. So in the hospital, I started thinking about what I was thankful for in my life. Not only the big things, but the small things. But then I asked myself who I appreciated, who was I thankful for, who could I acknowledge in my life? And when we ask ourselves that question, again, the big groups come to mind: our family, our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors, even strangers, like a nice cashier at the store. And in particular, in my case, I thought of a few people in for certain reasons. So first, I have a picture here. That is me in a wheelchair looking like Walter White from Breaking Bad for some reason. And the guy pushing me is my best friend from my fraternity days, Dave White. Dave and his wife, Beth, visited me for the weekend from Montana. They flew in and spent the weekend with us in Rochester. And I will always be grateful for him. He's my brother, not only fraternally, but we've kind of adopted each other into our families. And so I will always be grateful, not only to have him in my life in general, but for the generosity that he and his family gave us in many different ways. And also, I don't have a picture of this, but I am also thankful for my dad, Bill. When I was being, I guess, updated or debriefed about a surgery one Friday morning by my doctors, I felt a little cocky. And I said, Dr. Bakri, my plastic surgeon's name is Dr. Kareem Bakri, can I have a beer tonight? I mean, things are going well, and I'm not going to, go too crazy, but can I just have one? And he thought about it. He said, you know what? Yeah, sure. I think I'll have one too. So I'm thinking, okay, that sounds like a green light to me. So I call Bill, my dad, and I say, hey, Bill, when you visit tonight, bring a beer and 2 glasses. I'm not going to be able to finish one by myself, but I want to celebrate a little bit. So he comes up to the hospital. I must mention, by the way, that Bill at the time was one of the hospital chaplains. He's a retired minister who at the time was serving the hospital as a chaplain, visiting people and witnessing with them on occasion. Well, he gets into the room. He has his bag with the beer and 2 cups in it. And he stops and says, you know what, Chris, I'm going to check on something. And so he goes out of the room, comes back a minute later with this sheepish look on his face. And he says, Chris, we might be in trouble. They had to check on something. So I'm looking at that bag. I'm thinking, how long are we going to give them before I do something drastic? When the nurse comes in, holding a piece of paper in one hand and a beer in the other, the doctor had written me a daily beer prescription. Now, I'm not saying I partake every day, but after a long day, once in a while, it felt pretty good. And so I appreciated Bill having that experience with me, and being able to not only have that certain experience, but also the witness with me on his professional visits and also as my dad. And then, as you see in this picture, we have a couple nurses chasing me. And that's Dean and Sam. And they were great sports. They played along with me in that picture. But I also have another picture of Aaron and Amanda. And this picture was taken right before the pandemic. And what I would do is, when I would visit Bill and Dee, I would sometimes go on runs to the hospital to try to catch some of the nurses during their shift change. And here, Aaron and Amanda were friends of mine from my hospitalization. I was able to take a picture of them because I wanted to share with them what they still meant to me at that time, 5 years later, because they had such a profound effect on me. And so what I want to do now is I want to offer another tool to help augment your appreciation of someone. I call this the AAA. And this is to actively augment your appreciation of someone in your life. And so the first step is I want you to take a specific person out of your social circle, and you're just going to look at them on their own. You're not voting them off the island, or as the kids might say a couple years ago, they're not sus, but we're just trying to look at them without any connection to you. And so once you have that specific person out of that social circle and you're looking at them on their own, you're now going to think of the many ways that that person affects your life. I'll move this here. Oh, sorry. Just fix that. There we go. So you can think about how they teach, how they parent their kids, how they interact with others, all the ways that this person is a positive force in the world. And then finally, you want to, if I can get this again, place that person back in that social circle that you both share and realize that you have a relationship with this fantastic person. I love to use my wife, Becky, as an example. Yes, she's my wife, my partner, and my best friend. But when I look at her on her own, I see that she is also a fantastic mother, a loving daughter and sister, a brilliant teacher, a well-trained musician, a great athlete. And yes, she is almost as geeky as I am, but she keeps it a little hidden, more hidden than I do. And she's just a positive light in the community as a whole. Now I put her back in that social circle that we share. And I see that, yes, she is all of those things. But she's also my wife, my partner, and my best friend to boot. I am one lucky human, let me tell you. And so now I want you to think about who was someone you could acknowledge, and why could you do that? And why do you acknowledge them? And I want you to try to think of 3 people who have ever helped you recently or in the past, and let them know that you appreciate them today. And a bonus is I want you to write a detailed letter to one of these people that, shares your appreciation. And I want you to hand deliver it to them if you could, or email it to them, maybe snail mail it to them. But think of a few people who you appreciate and you want to acknowledge for your appreciation. And why is that? I'm going to turn on the chat again so I can see what people have to say here. So who could we acknowledge in our lives? Oh. And while you're doing that, I am going to move ahead. I know we're a little behind on time, and I apologize. The third step, thanks, Gary, your neighbor, very good, is we have the T, which is think of all the good things in your life, the A, which is acknowledge, appreciate, and then how can you be someone else's hero? And in the hospital, I couldn't do much. But when I was discharged, I started using my experience to help others who might have experienced a life-changing situation. And so I started writing, and I started not only writing, but I also created a podcast called Scar Bearers. And Kaylee is going to be an upcoming guest on that. And I also started public speaking because I want others to know that they too can overcome those origin stories. And then as teachers, there are all kinds of ways we can show random gifts and random acts of kindness. And now, I also want you to think of 3 ways that you can give others a reason to be grateful. And as you probably picked up, that think of all the good things in your life, acknowledge those you appreciate, and give others reasons you're grateful means it spells out tag. And I don't know about you, but playing tag by yourself is okay. Honestly, it's a little boring and embarrassing, but playing tag with others is where the magic happens. And the more you involve people, the more you can help make the world a better place. And there, you can look online, there are all kinds of different ways that gratitude supports health and helps you out and helps others out. And there's a great book by Robert Emmons called Gratitude Works that you can read. And he talks about how gratitude helps you feel more generous towards others, you be more forgiving and more outgoing and less isolated. And then really quick, before I end today, I want to share that in the chat, I will share a link to a daily tag journal that you all can start practicing tag on a daily basis. It has some questions on there. It doesn't take too long to fill out, but this is a way you can start increasing your own gratitude, positivity, and resilience. Because as you feel more gratitude in the world, you feel more positive about your life, you feel like you can take more challenges on. Really quick, I just want to show a quick picture before I end here. Here are a couple pictures of me. That picture on the left is me receiving my first degree black belt. And the pictures on the right are pictures of me during my marathon training journey. I have a marathon in 3 weeks where I'm training to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And it takes more than just a wish and a dream to accomplish those goals. You need to have resilience. And TAG has given that to me by seeing all the goodness in my life and all the positivity it has given me. It has helped me become more resilient. And that's what I want for you as teachers. Our lives are not perfect. I mean, personally, me, I look like a dollar store zombie toy with all my scars. But that doesn't mean I can't be great at what I do. And we all have issues. We have difficult families, students who are trying to engage, maybe stress from administrators or other situations. And life can seem pretty dark. But once you find that there are things around you you can grasp onto, you can be grateful for, you can develop that greater positivity and in turn more resilience, and you can help others do the same by playing tag. And I'm sorry that I ran out of time today, but I wanted to just let you know that, as I said before, you are all superheroes. Maybe you don't have superpowers, but you all have the ability to change the world. And by playing tag, that's what you can do for yourself, your colleagues, your students, and your community. So thank you very much.